But we can see in Acts chapter 2 that salvation just by believing, just a mental acknowledgement, that is a false teaching. We see the people have faith in this chapter. In verse 37, it says they were pricked in their heart. And so they came under conviction. They believed and wanted to respond to that message. They wanted to know, ask Peter and the rest of the apostles, what shall we do? And if you consider Peter's answer, he said, don't do anything. Don't you know that you're saved by faith alone and not by works? Right? Does your Bible say that? I'm being facetious. Of course Peter didn't say that. And this idea of just mental acknowledgement, faith alone, that's completely foreign to the New Testament. And if that was what the Bible taught, there would have been a golden opportunity for Peter to say, hey, you're already saved. You believed. But that is not what he said to them. All right? And we talked about the instructions he gave them. And, there are people today who just, if I can just state it simply, think they know better than Peter. Think they know better than the apostles. And, it's a sad thing, and I think there's a lot of good people in the denominational world who have listened to that kind of preaching their whole life, and they simply do not take the time to read their Bible, and they just believe what they're told. And so after Peter answered their question, telling them what needed to be done, notice there in verse 41, we read what they did. So they asked the question was answered, and then we see the response. We see what they did. Verse 41, then they that gladly received his word were baptized, and the same day there were added unto them about 3,000 souls. And so those who received the word were baptized. And so they asked what to do, they were told what to do, and then they did what they were told to do, right? So we come full circle. It's not complicated. It mentions them being added to the church, added to the believers, depending on your translation, after their obedience to the preached word. They were not added when they heard the gospel. They were not added when they were pricked in their heart and undoubtedly felt some strong emotions. They were not added then. They were not added when they simply repented. They were added when all those things culminated in them repenting and being baptized by the authority of Christ for the remission of sins. And only then do we read in verse 41 that 3,000 were added to them. Also, just a quick aside, it's not baptism only. And I've run into some people in the church who teach that. They just want to exalt baptism to the point where your salvation is simply rests on baptism. That's not what we see here either. And so as we look at this context, again, baptism is not the end. Baptism is a means to an end. Our end goal, and this is what we should encourage people, especially people who are interested in joining the church or obeying the gospel, the end goal is steadfast devotion to the apostles' doctrine. And the apostles' doctrine is Jesus' doctrine. These were inspired men. That is the end goal, to continue steadfastly in what the New Testament teaches. And in light of these things, I don't believe that we should just preach people into the baptistry. We should preach people into Christ. And I say that because too many times I've seen people get baptized, but then rather quickly just stop coming, fall away for whatever reason. And so please don't misunderstand what I'm saying. Yes, baptism is absolutely essential. It is absolutely essential in responding to the gospel and a person having their sins remitted and being added to the church. But I'm just saying, what good is baptism if a person's faith is so weak that they're not willing to, as they did in verse 42, if they're not willing to continue steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine. So that is the end goal, and that's what we should strive to press upon people, that when they're baptized, it is a lifelong commitment.